Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we are here to host Laravel Ahmedabad Meetup, and we have Pushpak, Baudipai and Chirag Shah with us. Pushpak gonna talk about uh, MCP by Laravel today on Laravel Ahmedabad Meetup. So let me introduce Laravel Ahmedabad community first. So it's since November 2018 we are doing meetups. We have already done 45 plus meetups. There were a total of about more than 1000 of attendees and 60 plus speakers. Right from the day one, we are following by the community and for the community formula. So let's meet the volunteers. We have Baudipai, uh, Ruchit Patel, Chirag Shah, Vinay Prajapati, Prem Thakkar, and me, Punyaval Shah. And yeah, this is the community. You, you can also follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. So here is the Twitter profile, and here is the Laravel Ahmedabad community profile. So yeah, let's go ahead with the meetup. But yeah, before that, today we have PHP Storm license giveaway. So stay till the end to win the license. So I will ask Pushpak to continue on his talk.
Perfect.
Yep,
So all good.
all good.
Perfect. So let me share my screen and
Yes.
we'll jump into the topic right away without doing a delay. So yeah, let me just quickly
So
hide
the stage
this
is
toggle.
yours.
Okay, thank you, Purnapal. So today, first of all, hello everyone. I hope there are a lot of people on the live stream, and I can also see a lot of people saying hi, and Ashley is also there. So yeah, I can see all of you. So in that stream, if you want to just say anything, just type on the chat and I will be able to see most of the things here. So today we gonna talk about like the talk of the topic is called MCP, the Laravel way. So in today's talk, we're mostly gonna see, do we need to implement MCP? Do we need to worry about MCP? What exactly is the MCP? And if as a Laravel developer ourselves, how it's gonna benefit us? Should we put an efforts to learn about the MCP, and then if we want to, then how exactly we can build MCP or like build MCP servers or build MCP apps in the Laravel itself. So that will be the topic of today's talk. So before we start the topic, let me introduce myself. I'm Pushpak, and I'm a software engineer from a small city called Dhule, which is, I think, 7 hours from Ahmedabad. I think 7 hour drive from Ahmedabad. So yeah, and I'm currently working as a software engineer at Laravel in open source team. You can find me on internet using this username called Pushpak1300. I'm available on GitHub, Twitter, wherever you can. I go by the same username everywhere. So let's dive. So before I learn any new technology, right, I always ask my like three questions to myself, like why, what, and how. So why this technology or this whatever new tool we are learning? Why do we want to learn this tool? What exactly that tool is, and then how we're going to learn about it. So these are the mostly three major questions which I mostly look for whenever I learn any new technologies or tools. Okay. And before we start, like I wanted to ask everyone, like how many of you have heard about MCP before? Like uh, I am pretty much sure like most of you have heard about MCP, but I just wanted to understand like how many of you have heard about MCP or maybe worked with MCPs before. You can just put in the chat box. I can see all of your messages coming along though. Okay, perfect. I see a couple of messages. So to answer the question why, right? We have to see what exactly basically MCP solves so that we need to learn this or not, right? Okay, perfect. Like a lot of Ashley is also saying that has he knows about MCP, and so there are a lot of you already know about MCPs. So that's perfect. I think that will set the talk very much great. But mostly the goal of the talk is to see how easy to build the MCP server using Laravel. Yeah. So I'm just gonna quickly do this thing. So if anyone is also not aware about the MCP, they will know what exactly the MCP is and all. Okay. So I'm pretty much sure that every one of you here will be working with all of these AI tools, like such as ChatGPT, Claude, maybe Claude Code, Cursor in your day-to-day life. That's for sure. And if you are not, then you should definitely use them. Uh, and I think like for last 3.5 years, we have seen very huge adoption in all these AI tools, right? Like today, you can't imagine yourself uh, any single day where you are not using that tool, right? So that's one thing. So adoption of all these AI tools are like very huge right now, and it's gonna increase in future. So why MCP, right? Let's answer this question. Like, why do we need to learn this? So if you ask if you ask any LLM any question, right? Most of the time it gives you the correct answer, but there are some times where it doesn't give you the correct answer, right? So there can be multiple reasons for it. Like LLM, when LLM got trained, right? It might not have that information about in the training data itself. So let's say recently, let's say if election happens recently and the LLM was trained before the election, then it will not have a outcome of that election in its training data. So it can't answer that data, and it will only have a data which was previously trained on. So LLM has this huge problem where they don't have a information about real time, and you can't provide a real time, like you can't retrain that information again and again, because training LLM is very hard and costly thing to do. So if you are building LLM, it's very like if you are building LLM, it's very costly to train this model yourself, because you need a lot of electricity, a lot of processing power, GPUs, and then only you will be able to train simple LLMs also. So training these big LLMs, which you see like ChatGPT, Claude, and everything, they are very, very expensive. So you can't train them like even every month also. So you might have seen like there is always time whenever new version of LLM model comes up, the Claude Sonnet 4. After like 5-6 months, they release another version of Sonnet 4.5, 4.1, like that. So that's how the training works. So there was always a problem of real-time information or the up-to-date information with the LLM. To solve this specific problem, very smart guys came up with something called as a tool calling. Okay, like they find out a way that if we want to extend all this real-time information to LLM, we might have to give some way to this LLM so they can fetch this real-time information. And tool calling is basically nothing. It's a very, in a very simple terms, it's a function which your LLMs can call at the end of the day. So let's suppose if your LLM needs a real-time information about the weather, they can just call that tool and then they can get the information about the weather. Or let's say if your LLM needs a real-time information about the news, they can just call that new web search tool or the news tool and then get the real-time information, and then they can answer your queries, questions, or whatever the task which you have given them. So this was the problem which was solved by the tool calling. And there is another thing also using which you can actually change the behavior or the output of tool calling, which is a fine tuning. Again, there is a training involved in the fine tuning. Again, that's a real little expensive. So that thing doesn't really work that much, but that's also another option using which you can actually find like control or steer the output of LLM the way you want. But that is little expensive than tool calling, and tool calling is very much extensible. So anyone can extract their tools and give it to the LLM, and then LLM can get the real-time information very, very easily. Unless we are in fine tuning, you have to get the data set, then train the LLMs on that new data set, and then you will have the real-time information on, like you will have the information on that LLM. But that's the thing. So that's why tool calling is much more popular than fine tuning. But these are the mainly two ways, like tool calling and the fine tuning, using which you can actually extend the context of this LLMs. But after multiple providers started releasing this tool calling feature, there was another problem that every different provider like Anthropic, OpenAI, they have their own different way of defining the tool. So you as an application developer will have to actually create those integration, like those two different integration yourself. Let's suppose if you are building an app with ChatGPT, Claude, or any other LLM, you have to build all those integration yourself. That's a headache for you, because let's say tomorrow another new LLM comes out, you have to again build a new integration for that. So to solve this problem, Anthropic actually released this MCP in November 2024. So they thought that no one actually should be able to like create a different integration every single time they have to integrate with different AI tools, right? So they came up with a protocol, and they created this as an open source protocol in November 2024. And till now, I think almost 1 year, I think 11 months, there are almost more than 10,000 MCP servers still live on the internet. So like they are about Laravel Boost is MCP server. Then there are different MCP servers about different tech stacks. MCP servers about Stripe, MCP servers about Gmail, controlling your MacBook, all sort of different MCP servers. So I believe specifically going forward for like next 1 2 years, the adoption for MCPs will be gonna be so much huge, because I use myself and I find a lot of usefulness after using MCPs. So I will give you one example where it has worked really bonkers for me. So yesterday, I also tweeted about this. Yesterday, I was just looking for some different ways to do the arbitrage trade. And I'm not very much good into trading. I'm not a finance guy. So I just connected my trading account using the MCP, using Kite MCP to my Claude code, sorry, my Claude. And then I just asked, like, based on this, my account information, can you find all this arbitrage opportunities, all these trading opportunities where I can get some risk-free returns? And it basically went ahead, did all sort of things, and came up to me and gave me a very nice trade setup where I can actually make money out of it. So as for me, I didn't know much more about trading. I don't know about finance. I don't know how this thing works, but I just asking it, connecting with my MCP server, it gave me a correct information how to execute all this thing. Interestingly, I also saw another example today morning, just to show you guys, if you don't use MCP, what exactly the harm is, what will happen. Just to show you guys, let me just quickly show you one thing. So let's suppose I asked Claude that does Laravel have a failover queues into the framework, and it is available in Laravel 10. So this failover queues has been recently released in Laravel. I think 1 week back only, not even 1 week back. It's very recently a new feature, right? And I asked it. The first time it said yes, Laravel has built-in queue failover functionality and it's available in Laravel 10, which is incorrect by the way. But even though I asked this to Claude, which was Sonnet 4.4, 4.5, it actually gave me like just some random things, just hallucinated a lot, right? But then I went ahead. There is a hosted version of the Boost MCP. So if you are using Laravel Boost, right? So internally at Laravel, we have created something called as a hosted version of Boost, where you can actually connect with your AI coding agents and it can search the documentation for you. So I just enabled that and asked the same question again. Like, does Laravel have a failover queues in the framework, and is it available in the Laravel dev? Now, before jumping into the answering me, it went and actually searched for the documentation. Like, it searched the documentation with the queries queue failover and search in Laravel 10 version. Same it did for again, because I don't know why it might not have found any result. And then it came to me and say, based on the Laravel tell documentation, I need to clarify my previous answer. Laravel does not have built-in queue failover driver in the framework itself. So as you see, like just using Boost MCP, I get correct information. So I don't have to recheck it again. It has confirmed by the doc itself. So you see how many advantages are there. And now after that, I add which Laravel version introduced queue failover mechanism, and can you get me updated docs for it? Again, it went ahead, search for different framework version and saw it is actually available in 12, and it also see like if it's available in the older version or not to answer this question. And then it mention it correctly, because with Laravel Boost, we have basically created a search doc which actually ingest all this documentation every single day. So now you can see it actually correctly fetch it from the doc, give me the correct config and everything. And that's how it has made the life easier, right? You don't have to, like, it will not hallucinate basically if you are using correct MCP for the correct thing. It will give the context to your LLM, a correct context to your LLM, that this is the thing which you need to, which you need in order to give the answer to the user, and then based on this context, your answer will be formed. So it basically gonna improve your output of LLM agents like dramatically. So let's go back to the slide. We now understood why do we need MCP. I think everyone is convinced that if we want to make sure that we provide real-time context to your LLM, we have to basically give it through a MCP. Or maybe behind the scene MCP use tool calling. So you can either build tool calling for Claude and then you can use it. But the advantage of using MCP is you can actually plug it across OpenAI, ChatGPT, and so let's say OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google also. So let's look into in more detail. But we have answered the why question, like why we need to learn about the MCP. Now let's look at what is MCP. Like we talked about MCP, like what is MCP? On a higher level, you all understood the point, like what exactly the MCP. But now we're gonna go into the lot of details about what all things are there in MCP, how it works, how it does not work, how we should use, right? All these things. So as mentioned, so it's an open standard for connecting your AI application to the external system. In this case, the example which I showed you, the external system was the search documentation, the Laravel documentation in which we connected our Claude code to Claude, right? And using MCPs, you can basically connect your all these agents, all this Claude code, cursor, and all sort of these agents to your applications which you use in daily life, such as I use Google Calendar and Gmail a lot. So I can just take the MCP of Google Calendar and Gmail and then connect with my AI agent and ask the question like, can you summarize this thread for me? If you are not using MCP, you might have to copy all those emails and put it into the Claude and then ask it to summarize it. But if you have already the connection ready with the Google Calendar and Gmail, you can just ask it to summarize that specific conversation. You can ask what your day-to-day routine looks like, all sort of things, and it will behave in much more personalized sense. Then your AI agent will have the context of all your things. So that way it dramatically improves your output. Currently, as of now, Anthropic has released it, so it basically supports it. OpenAI also now supports it into ChatGPT. Also, it gives you, they have also access in their API where you can mention MCP servers and connect through the API. Then Google supports it not in the Gemini, but in the Gemini CLI, the core CLI, they actually support the MCP. I'm pretty much sure they have plans to extend it to the Gemini chat itself also. But for now, they doesn't support in the Gemini chat code. I don't think a lot of people use Gemini chat, but in the Gemini CLI, they have support for the MCP. So most of the major AI providers use it. Also, if you are using any software AI, like coding AI agents such as Cursor, Claude Code, Copilot, PHP from Juni, all sort of things, all this support MCP out of the box. So in a simple terms, MCP is basically a USB-C cable of your, so like as USB-C works for Android phone also and iPhone also, right? The same way that MCP protocol will for different providers, and it's like same as a HTTP protocol. So at the end, it's an open source protocol for extending your AI application, like extending your AI application for the external system. So that's mostly about it. Now we're gonna go into much more detail, like what all the components of the MCPs and all. And also, like MCP is also derived at model context protocol. So that means like how you're gonna give the context to your model. There is a protocol for it, and that's how the MCP has been like. That's how I know. That's how I think of MCP name has came like model context protocol. You can give your model the context, and that's the protocol created for the. So the next and the most important thing in the MCP is the primitives. So the primitives are basically things which can be shared between client and server, like which can be shared between both client and server. So in the MCP there are two components. The major one is a MCP client, and then there is a MCP server. Majorly, whenever we're going to talk about MCP in today's talk, we will be mostly talking about the server side. And the client side is basically all these AI agents you see, like ChatGPT, Cloud Code, Cursor, and all sort of things. So they will be the client. And so the primitives are the things actually your client and your application can share between each other. Your server can share between each other. So there are mainly three primitives on the server side. Major are only three. There are other primitives also. The client primitives also are there, but mostly we will be talking about the server primitives for the for this talk. So the next, like the first important primitive is a tool. So all this tool calling is basically bundled into something called as a tool. So now this you can package this as a tool and share it across different AI providers. At the core, tools is a very simple thing. It's an executable function that your AI applications or the LLMs can call at the end of the day. So they can do all sort of API queries, they can do database queries, if they need to do any file operations. So all these things can be done using tools. Then the next primitive, which is another important primitive, is resource primitive. So resource is something you can predefine it. It's a data source basically. So resource is nothing but a data source which provides the contextual information to the AI application. This can be the files, database records, DB schema, API documentation. So these are like binary files, like which you can just ship it to your AI application, and then based on that context, AI application can answer, do some automation, do some agentic things, all sort of things. And then at the end, there is a thing called prompts. So prompts is nothing but a reusable templates that help structure, like basically that will help reusable templates which you can reuse between different workflows. So let's suppose you want to generate analytics every week for your application, and you have like written a very big query for getting that data and then putting that data into AI, getting some visualization out of the AI. You can actually pack this as a prompt, and then you can share it using the MCP so that anyone in the team can just import that prompt, use that prompt, and generate those results. So it's a simple reusable prompt which you can share through the MCP server. So let's look at how the architecture looks like for the MCP. So this will help you understand more in the context of how this entire thing works. So at you see here, which is a AI host, which is nothing but a Claude, ChatGPT, or any sort of AI application. Okay. So they have to implement a MCP client. MCP client is nothing but a whatever the specification MCP protocol has defined, right? They have to implement that MCP client specification themselves, like how to connect to the server, how to ask for tool, how to call the tools, all sort of things. How to list tools, how to list prompts, how to list resource, all these sort of things. So this will be the part of your AI application. Now AI application will talk with MCP client that I need, let's say tools. Then MCP client is going to send a request to the MCP server. Again, MCP server also needs to follow those same specification which are defined by the MCP protocol. Okay. So again, MCP server will, based on that request which MCP server has received, it will respond into that. Like if it has received for the response for executing the tool, then it will execute the tool and send back the response. If it has received the response for, consider this as an API request at a very simple layer. Like the gate API request will get you all the resource information. The same way there is a different types of request information are there in MCP protocol using which you can transform the data between server and client. Okay. So till now, I think everyone is clear about how this thing works. So as you mentioned, there are, and this is your Laravel app where you will be defining the MCP server. There will be tools, there will be prompts, there will be resources which you can share with the MCP clients, basically. Okay. One more thing is that there are two transport which on which MCP protocol works. The one transport is a standard input output, which is nothing but if you are running MCP server locally, it works on a standard input output transport, which is so if you are using Laravel Boost, right? Laravel Boost is you run it locally, like PHP Artisan Boost MCP, right? Sorry, PHP Artisan MCP start Boost. So this using this command, you can run the Laravel Boost. So that is actually running on the standard STDIO, standard input output transport layer. Then there is another layer which is called as a HTTP layer. Again, it's if you are using any hosted version of MCP, it's using the HTTP layer basically. And there is another which is server side events, but it's mostly combined and it's mostly same. So we will be mostly focusing on HTTP layer. So HTTP layer is basically our same way, like API request you send GET push. Same way it works on that same transport. Your MCP client will send the GET request to MCP server in specific format, and then MCP server will respond to that request at the at a very simple or very higher level. Now we have answered the what also, like what exactly the MCP is, what all things are there. Now, as a Laravel developer, if we have to implement MCP in our applications, right? We definitely know that MCP is gonna be much more important. It's important right now also and gonna be important in the future. Yes. So we're gonna see how it's gonna work. Like as a Laravel developer, we don't have to like if you want to implement this MCP server yourself, you have to read those specification, implement those specification yourself into app. But as a Laravel developer, Laravel has package for everything, right? So Laravel has already thought of all these things and give you the abstraction yourself. So there is a one package which has been created by the Ashley and Nuno in the Laravel team. They have created this package called Laravel MCP, which basically gonna take care of all these things, defining the entire like all this specification. So you just have to worry about working on a very high level. So as a Laravel developer, we know how to define the API, how to write a API, how to write jobs, how to write controllers, right? The same way Laravel MCP package offers you to write all this MCP server in a very simple way, so that most of the all the other things about the specification and everything is handled by the Laravel MCP package. So let's look at the code now. Uh, I have set up the basic Laravel application, and it's already I have most of like I have mostly done all of the things beforehand only because to avoid any surprises. So we're just gonna see that how easy it is to implement this entire thing, and then we will just try to see it in action, and then we'll just can conclude it. So let me close this tab. So as you can see, you can find the documentation on the Laravel website itself. So if you want to install the MCP package, you can just compose the require Laravel/MCP. And once you do that, okay, perfect. So this is the application which I have developed for now. It's a very simple blank Laravel application, and I just installed the MCP package in it. And after that, I have published the routes. So as you know, like every entry point of your Laravel application is in the routes folder, right? There is a ai.php file which has been generated after running that command. And before that, there is a console.php and web.php, which are another entry point for your Laravel application. So if you are getting HTTP requests, that is basically gonna be handled by the web.php. If you are gonna run PHP artisan and all sort of things, that mostly be going through the console.php, right? And the same way, to define another entry point, which is an MCP server, you have a ai.php file. Okay. So basically, you will get a blank ai.php file, after which I just run PHP Addison make MCP server. So you get 4 make commands after with this package. So you see, you get MCP prompt, MCP resources, MCP server, MCP tool, uh, and then there are another command which MCP inspector, and but you get 4 make MCP command which you can use to generate all this server resources, prompt, and tool. So I just ran this command, and then this file got created. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So most of the things were pre-filled. The most important thing which you have to define here is the instructions. As LLM only knows how, like we talk with LLM on a natural language basis, right? So to give LLM access to our context, right, we have to provide a very nice natural language description of what this MCP server is used for, right? So let's say if you need any information about the Laracon, use this MCP server. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to create one simple MCP server called Laracon, which is going to help do a couple of things. So just we're going to see what all things it's going to do in future. But you can define your name of your MCP server. You can define the instruction or the description of your MCP server, like for why on in which cases you need to use this MCP server. Like if someone asks about Laracon, if someone asks about the specific things, then need to use this MCP server. So it's a very basic example which I'm trying to show, but it can become a lot complex also. Like if someone asks about this application info, or if someone wants to generate a invoice or something like that, or send a payment link or something like that, then you have to define those instructions in a very structured manner, very detailed, as detailed as possible, like in which specific case, in what action you need to do, what all tools, what all prompts they can use in different scenarios. But keep it light also, not just to like put a lot of much information. Make sure the information it needs to work. You have to like try it out to see on which information it works and on which information it doesn't work. Then there are 3 properties, which is nothing but tools, resources, and prompts. Again, those are the 3 main primitives we talk about, the server primitives we talked about. So to define the tools, you can just add whenever you're going to create a new tool. Tool is nothing but a class. You can just add that extra tool here. I have just predefined it just to show you guys like how it gonna be. So it will be an empty array when you're gonna generate this file. You just have to add those classes whenever you're gonna create a new classes, new tools, new resources, and new prompts. So to generate the tools, like tools is the I think the most important thing in the MCP. So to generate the tool, there is a command called make tool, and you have to pass the file of that. And I have just find get Laracon info tool. It's a very simple tool. To get updated information about the Laracons happening around all the world, you can just call this tool. You can update the description. Again, the description is the most important thing in a tool. So LLM will know that when I need to call this tool. So whenever I'm going to ask the question about LLM to get the updated information about the Laracon, it will call this tool. Again, handle a request is where the tool call, like again, it's same as the job handle method, or a lot of it's again standard Laravel way of doing things. A handle, you will get a request, you can do all sort of uh, dependency injection and all sort of things over here. And then just give me a minute. Yeah. The another important thing in a tool is something called as schema. So schema is nothing but a data which required in order to execute that tool. So in order to, let's suppose, let's take another example. In order to get the weather of that, like let's say this is a get weather tool. In order to get a weather of that specific place, right? The first information we need is maybe latitude, longitude, or maybe the place of that, like name of that place where we want to get the weather from. Or there can be multiple like schema parameters also. There can be like multiple different schema parameters. So all these things you can actually define over here. Again, this is array, so you can define all many schema parameters. There is different types of schema. So like if I go here, there is a way to define integer, number, string, boolean, array, object. And on top of it, you can add enum also. Then you can define variables which are required in order to generate the tool. So let's suppose if you are running some invoice generation or something, let's say, and you need which, or let's say you need to, you have created a tool to get information about specific post. You need a post ID in order to get that data, right? So that will be always required. So you can define all these things. So this will be transformed and will be sent to the LLM so that LLM can set those parameters correctly. And then whenever LLM is going to send us the response back, this handle method will be executed. And here, as usual, you get a request on which you can just get the location. You can do the validation also. I haven't showed the validation, but you can do the validation also. You can send appropriate error messages so that your LLM can now send correct information in the next LLM tool call. And then I'm just doing very simple thing here. I'm just matching the location with different things, which I have defined in the schema, and then just sending that information back. But as a real world application, you will be like querying the database. You will be calling the API application to get that specific information. You can do all sort of things here. Like it's something you can call cache method. You can do authorization if you want to do. You can check all sort of logic. So it's like whatever application code you can write in the controller, you can write over here. And then at the end, the way you send the response back to the server, you can just mention here response text and info. There are different types of things you can pass. There are blob information. There are JSON also you can pass. So you can just look at the response class to see what all things you can send it. And then you can just send it back, that information, to the LLM. Now, as a MCP package will do the hard work for you in order to transform that whatever the response you are sending into that specific MCP protocol structure and then send back to the client. So you don't have to worry about doing anything. You just define this in a very simple way, and then MCP package will take care of it. Will take care of the rest. So just to show you example, right? Before, if we are not using MCP, when is the Laravel India answered in one line? I've just asked the same question to the VS Code. Okay, by the way, I have run the composer run dev. Let me restart it so that we are fresh. And to show you, if I ask this question to the LLM, if they don't have a tool call, sorry, if they don't have access to my MCP and not access to any tool, they can't answer this question. Like, I don't have a live web website to check this year's schedule. Please see the official Laravel website on their Twitter for the exact date. So you get it, like without connecting the MCP server, they will not have access of this information. But now we're just gonna see how it will work if we just ask the question. And I'm just gonna close all these windows so it doesn't give the context from there. And I'm just gonna make sure if MCP server is enabled. So see, the server has been enabled. By the way, I have already enabled it by creating a file over here in MCP JSON and then mention that HTTP localhost 8000 MCP/Laravel. By the way, if you are running this locally, you don't have to run this using URL. You can just run the command called php artisan boost MCP and then like name, and then in the type you have to define stdio. But as we have defined this as a as we defined this as a local as well as web handler, I just mentioned this as a MCP Laravel. Okay, I'm just gonna close this and I'm gonna ask it, when is the Laravel India happening? Now it has access to that MCP server, so it knows all the tools and everything which are there. So we're just gonna see how it's gonna work. Hopefully it works correctly. I'm not sure if I created todo, but let's see. So now see, in order to here, I will retrieve Laravel India information from the MCP Laravel service, and it's gonna pass correct location in case of India. To get the event data and details, expect outcome, event data, and brief details return. Okay, and here it's showing us which, let me just show in a little, which MCP server and which tool we're gonna call, and which input. So you can change the input over here also, and then if you want to see, but it's a correct input they have already selected. So we're just gonna allow it. Now when it's gonna create it, it called the MCP tool. Tool has responded it back with Laracon India, January 31, February 1, 2020 in Ahmedabad, India. And now, as it has updated information available with it in own context, it can answer my query. Like Laracon India will held on January 30, February 1, 2026 in Ahmedabad, India. So it's a very simple example which I have shown you, right? Using this, you can actually build a very complex MCP server about your application. So let's suppose if you have a Nightwatch type application, right? You can actually build a MCP server to get that all the context, or let's say, I think there's someone created a Forge MCP, also a community member. You can actually get information about your servers. You can interact with your servers, and all sort of crazy things you can do, right? So it's that simple to actually build the MCP server, and it's very easy to build a tool also. So now we're gonna see the another thing, which is the resources. And I'll just go to quickly to resources which we have defined. So resources is nothing but a data thing, a data sharing which you can directly share with the LLM things. So consider this as, let's say, if you have a file, right? Let's say if you have a file or text file, or maybe let's say a report which gets generated on your server every for like admin, and then you have to give that report access to your AI agent. You can just define that resources into your this resource class. By the way, I have generated, like I have executed this command to make MCP resource and then pass Laravel resource to generate this class. Again, description is important here, but the most important thing here is a handle thing, because in handle you can fetch all sort of things, like if I want to give this user information about this specific report or not, you can write all those logic here. And then you can just, currently I have just hard coded the data. Like, so consider this like it's a text file. Like I've just hard coding the data and then passing this as a text response. So let's say in case it could have been the text file also, which are there in server. It can be the images, it can be all sort of things, but you can just extend this as a image, and then you can just expose this as a resource to your MCP. So let me quickly open this, and I will attach MCP resource here, and it has automatically detected the MCP resource based on the MCP server which I have connected, and it's sending that file resources Laravel resource. When I select this, and I'm just going to close that so that this Laravel resource class context doesn't get included in that. So whenever I'm going to select that, this entire thing will be automatically available to AI even before it will be sent with the request. So it doesn't have to do a tool calling of sorts. So whenever you think like you have to do some type of analytics or something like that, you can generate a report from your server, expose this as a resources, and then when whoever is using that MCP server just can connect to that resource, get that report, and then ask questions on top of it, do certain types of things. So I'm just gonna close this. Not sure what is this. Okay, that's fine. Perfect. Now it has access of that data, but this time it's not gonna call the tool of our server. So I'm just gonna ask when Laracon Australia is gonna happen and in which city. So now you see, like the moment I send the question to my AI agent, it has also passed that entire thing Laracon resource, and it will have the context beforehand, and then it will be able to answer your query without any issues. So in this case, Laracon Australia is scheduled for November 13-14 in Brisbane, Australia, based on the resource file which we have generated. And this is a file basically which has been passed to the LLM or AI agents. So you can see it has in context of Laracon Australia, it has defined as 13-14 November, and it is in Brisbane. So you get the point. Like using this, you can actually extend all sort of things from your application, like some kind of a reports. If there is an invoice, you can export the invoice also, and your user who has subscribed this can actually get their invoices and ask questions about that. Again, there can be different possibilities. They can do all sort of different things. And finally, if you come to the prompt thing, which is nothing but a Laravel poem prompt which I've created, I didn't find any better example than this to show for the prompt primitive. So I just created a very simple example. But consider wherever you have to use prompts again and again. So you might have also like have some Google Drive where you are keeping some very complicated or very big prompts, right? Which you can share across the organization. We can actually, or maybe sometimes what you need to do is like, let's say, whenever you ask coding agents to do certain kind of things, right? You wanted to do certain things specifically to your organization. You can define that as a prompt. Like maybe let's say you are generating a Laravel application in a multi-tenancy way, right? And there are certain different ways which the class or database has been designed in your application. So you can create a prompt specifically designed where you can mention all these things. You can include that prompt with your coding agent, and then it will just answer based on that prompt. Like this will have the context, like this is application is using this multi-tenancy application. So it was actually a better example to show, but I just came up with this basic example. So here you can see it's a prompt description. Again, it's an important thing. It tells what exactly the prompt is being used for. And then uh, there is another thing called as an argument. Argument is nothing but a placeholder thing in a prompt. Like let's say your prompt has certain placeholder on which it works, right? Let's say for this prompt, right? And I have to pass this location into the prompt. The same way, just let me zoom it a little bit. And same way you can define the argument here, like what argument it requires in order to make that prompt complete. In this case, it's location, the Laravel location, the code, India, Europe, or anything you can pass. And then I'm just doing a simple thing where I'm just taking a request location and then just sending a very simple prompt, like write a short poem about Laravel and then passing that location. Here you can be as detailed prompts as possible. You can send as detailed prompt. You can define them in view also and then pass that as a view. That is also fine if there is a very complex prompt. So all sort of things are actually possible over here. And to use the prompt, let me just open this new thing. You can define this, and then in VS Code, it's defined this way. MCP. Yeah, so see, I just selected MCP Laravel poem prompt, and it's just asking me the location code. So I'm just gonna send IN basically for India, and then I'm gonna insert as a text. So the moment I click it insert as the text, the entire prompt, whatever we have written, has been imported over here. Again, this can be different also. Write a short poem about developers attending so I'm just gonna do that again here in India. So now the updated prompt has been came over here, and now you can just run this prompt. I'm just gonna close this. It's just to show you how the prompt works in the MCP server. It's just a simple thing. It's a reusable prompt which you can share with your team members, with your customers, with your users, anything you can think of, whatever you can think of. Uh, Perfect. So these are the mostly three MCP primitives which we have seen, and that's all the things about the all the things about the MCP package, right? That's how easy to get started building the MCP server into your Laravel app. And yeah, that's mostly about it. Let's go back to the slides. Perfect. I hope everyone understood that whatever I told, and it was easy to grasp. So there are a couple of things which I haven't covered in this today's stuff, but which are equally important and equally nice feature of the MCP package, which is auth support. So by default, it comes with the OAuth 2 and also the Sanctum authentication token. So if you're using Sanctum or Passport for your Laravel application for authentication or anything, you can actually extend this authentication. You can build the authentication for this MCP server. Again, the docs are well defined in the Laravel website, so you can just look at for the docs. Then you can also apply middleware to your servers. Same way you define middleware for your HTTP routes like API request, right? Or web request. You can define middlewares to your MCP server. So let's suppose if you want to do certain things before, you can do all sort of things. So the same way you define middleware, you can define it over here also. Again, it has a very nice testing utilities. So you can test your MCP application very easily, which we haven't talked today's talk. And then there is of validation also. Again, we talked about validation, but validation is also there and it's very fluent, like as defined, as easy as possible in the Laravel controllers, the same way you can actually use in a Laravel MCP package. And that's mostly about it. I think, again, I will just like to reintroduce myself. I'm Pushpak, and you can find me on internet using Pushpak1300. And if you have any questions, if you build something about it, tweet it. I will definitely like to retweet it. So yeah, I will be very much excited if you build something with MCP package. Please share with us. And that's mostly about me. So I think we can take the questions now. Punyabad.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for the talk. Uh, we have also, I mean, we already have two questions I will share with you. But before that, I want to share a form link to everyone so they can just fill the form and participate in a giveaway of PHP Storm license. So yeah, I have shared the Google form link. So everyone fill the link and comment I have filled. So we can also understand that you have filled the link. And I will also just ask community members to join. Okay, so let's take our very first question, which is from Vinay Prajapati, and I will show it on the screen as well. So it's after MCP server starts, which is called first, tool, prompts, or resources?
Uh, it's so the moment MCP starts, so there is a communication on the protocol thing happens between client and server. It exchanges couple of information about what exactly the server is, what all different things is. Again, I'm not specifically not, but again, there is a thing called as like it sends a request. Like it depends on the client that which request it wants to execute first. Like if it wants to execute prompt, it can send the prompt request to get that prompt/list, tool/list, resources/list, something like that. And then it will respond, the server will respond in the same way. But before that, before doing all these things, there is some uh, like connection establishment happens. So MCP client sends couple of requests, then MCP server send response back that yes, I got your request, and this is the information about me as a server. Store this information, and when you like again after that, it depends on like there is a lot of things. It's not so on MCP documentation site you can get that entire life cycle. How does the entire thing works? But on top of me, as far as I know, after this entire request establishment or the connection happens, then it depends on the client to send the whatever request they want to, like tool/list, resource/list, and prompt/list to get that information about. So yeah, it depends on client basically.
Okay, I think the link was not shared before because I think I cannot comment a link from the Laravel Ahmedabad account. So I shared it from the my account, and now you guys can fill the form and yeah, confirm that you have filled it already. And to participate into the PHP Storm giveaway. The another question is from Shah BXS. Isn't Laravel Prisma tool same as the Laravel MCP tool?
Actually, no. Laravel Prism actually solves a different problem that what Laravel MCP solves. Using Prism, you can actually build a AI integration into your Laravel apps. And using MCP package, you can actually build integration which LLMs can use. Again, there is, I'm not sure how to explain this, but let me again try it. So in this case, in the Prism case, the Laravel application will actually call the API of ChatGPT, Claude, and all sort of things to get the chat completion inside the Laravel app itself. But in case of MCP, the ChatGPT and Claude will actually call your Laravel app API, not Laravel app MCP, and then get the information to themselves. So you get the like I hope it was clear, right? By the way, if you have a MCP server already, there is a thing called relay in the Prism. So you can actually use that relay to connect with the MCP server, and then you don't have to define all these tools, whatever we have defined, right? Multiple times. You can just using that Prism relay and then connect that MCP server, and then it will do that entire translation of tools for you.
Okay, I have one question that MCP package from the Laravel is in beta, right? So, what timeline you guys have to make it actually usable for everyone? I mean,
It's actually usable, to be honest.
yeah, of course, but
Beta in the sense is it's just released, right? We just want to see how it works. If there are any like basic bugs which we missed during the
yeah,
development, it's mostly stable. What I have seen, even the boost example which I showed is actually built using the MCP package itself. Like when I was showing that boost search example, Laravel boost behind the search use MCP package. It's pretty much stable, works flawlessly most of the times. So I'm not sure about the timeline. I think Ashley might be able to, if he's here in chat, then he might be able to tell you guys about more about it. But it's mostly stable in my opinion. Give it a try. Build again. If there is any bug, you can just report it on the repository, and then you can send a PR also, or someone will fix it. So that's mostly about it. Yeah. So I think I talked about this, but there are two protocols, like three protocols, which MCP support. One is server side events, STDIO, and then HTTP protocol. Hello, am I audible, guys?
oh, okay, my voice was not there. Sorry.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
I have already shared the question. So, yeah.
uh, guys, I think no audio. Am I audible,
I
guys?
think I was muted. That's why they said it.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, okay. I think I'm audible now. So, uh, okay, still I'm getting no audio.
So
So,
there is a bit a delay. So that's
okay, perfect. So, in AI.php, there are okay, I will come to this another question. Okay.
yeah. Sorry,
So
sorry.
there are two ways you can actually define in the AMCP package. One is a HTTP protocol and another one is a standard info protocol. So if you are defining a if you are building MCP server which gonna works locally only, what I mean by locally is that something like a Boost MCP, right? It's a server using which you can just locally interact with your Laravel application. So it doesn't make sense to actually start a very expensive HTTP protocol on top of the MCP protocol, right? Uh, so there is another protocol which they guys have created called standard input output, which basically works passing the working on the standard input output IO. It's gonna pass couple of information on that protocol. So that local thing is basically for the standard input output standard input output transport, and the another is I think Wave. Wave is for the HTTP protocol, which is actually if you are using hosted MCP server, in most of the cases you will be using hosted MCP server. So you can use like it's same as a route gate, route post. In this case, just we are defining the transport. Like this is using the standard input output transport, and this is Wave is using the HTTP transport. HTTP transport basically gonna you can create a hosted MCP server. Then anyone over the internet can just define the URL and then call that MCP server.
Yeah. And let's get to the another question. You
How
already,
Laravel understand which MCP server
yeah.
to use if there are multiple servers for an app?
So yeah, let me share it in the
Laravel basically
Discord.
doesn't understand which MCP server to use. Laravel doesn't care about MCP servers at all. Uh, which MCP server is to use is gonna depend on MCP client. So
Sorry.
MCP
Yeah.
client will actually decide which MCP server to use, and you can define multiple MCP servers also. I shown the in VS Code there was a file called mcp.json which you have to create it in order to define the I think mcp.json only, right? Yes. So in .vs Code folder, you have to define mcp.json file, and in that there is a MCP JSON where you have to define MCP servers which are available. You can define 2, 3, 4, 5, as long as you can define as many MCP server. Now your MCP client is gonna send like MCP client is gonna make the connection to all those MCP server listed in that mcp.json file. Try to establish a connection between all of them, and whatever connection it established, it will have that information into your MCP context. So if I can quickly show something, just to give you guys an idea. So if I just give the just give a minute, guys. Here, if I start Claude Code, you can actually see MCP. Here, I have connected the boost, right? I'm just
I
gonna
think you need to
click it
zoom it
and
bit.
just gonna start the context here, just to show you guys. So this is a MCP client at the end of the day. And if I show you here, it shows how many contexts is used for the MCP tools. So as many MCP server you connect to your MCP client, that many context, like that much context will be used for your MCP client, because every time in order to decide which MCP server to call, it needs to send all the information. I have this many available MCP server now. From all this server, which MCP server I need to call to the LLM, and then LLM will decide based on that context. Yeah, okay, you can call this MCP server because I need to get information about the Laracon, or for in this case Laracon, this Claude will say that I need to get information about the database. So I will call Laravel Boost and then gonna get the information about the database. So that's how it works basically. So Laravel will not connect with the MCP at all. MCP server is gonna connect with the and decide which server to use basically.
Got it. So if you guys have more questions, you can ask. I think there are no more users are interested in PHP Storm license giveaway. So I think let me share my screen and uh, run the Wheel of Fortune to uh, select our lucky winner, right? And we will share the PHP Storm license to them. Okay, so let me just copy the names. That is Swati Bharadwaj. Please touch that. Okay. So if you still want to join and comment, uh, so just add it. We can also wait for 1-2 minutes more. If no one is filling the form, we will just spin the wheel and we will get our PHP Storm license winner. Do you have any
I think
questions? Okay.
I
Yeah.
think someone asked about securing the MCP server.
Okay. Let me share it. Yeah.
But I think we can complete this, and after that we can just.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think we can wait for like few attendees to
Okay.
fill the form.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So to secure the MCP server, you can actually put a auth. First of all, the authentication layer you can add. Once you add an authentication layer, it could be using OAuth or it could be using the Sanctum authentication. Okay, these are the two authentication right now MCP Laravel MCP package supports. You can build if you have your own way of distributing the JWT tokens or something like that. You can use that also by defining that middleware and then using defining that authorization like header and then just defining the middleware to authorize that request. Um, that's one thing. After that, you get a context of the entire user itself. Like once you implement the auth, you get the context of user. Then the same way in the controller, you check with a role, right? Like if this user is able to do a certain specific action, you can actually use that. However, OAuth2 scope is not supported at the MCP package at this point. Only one scope is be added, like which is the MCP scope. So currently, checking off adding MCP like scope in the passport package is not supported by the MCP. But once you can just authenticate with the passport and then just run the authorizations across across your that handle method that check if user is able to do that or not, and then just send the response back. User doesn't have request, like the user doesn't have permission to execute this request or something like that.
Okay. So I think no more new questions, and we can see that one more name is added. Okay, one more name is added. Okay, so we have a total of 15 people, or we can say 14 people. Uh, and I don't think now we're gonna get new registrations. So let's just do it. Hmm. And after that, we will take new questions. Okay, so who is the lucky winner? Oh, okay. So Kaushik, you won it, and yeah, you will get your PHP Storm license on the email you shared. Okay, so that was for the license. I will copy this name so just not forget. Okay, let's move
By
ahead.
the way, someone
And
asked another question,
yes, so let me share
but
it
I,
to
I
screen.
didn't understood the question. Like I don't really know the
Hmm.
main difference between an API and MCP server. I know it sounds like a silly question, but seriously, as a developer, you can use the MCP server inside an editor because inside an editor they have created a MCP client which can actually call the MCP server. So all this Claude code, VS Code, uh, ChatGPT, Claude can actually call. They have implemented MCP client inside their editor itself. Like editor at the end is also software, right? So they have implemented that MCP client, and it's basically calling API only. if you are using HTTP transport, it's nothing but a API, but in a specific format, a predefined format. Uh, like you always need to pass specific headers, specific parameters, specific schema. Always like the conversation needs to happen using JSON RPC protocol. Again, MCP use another protocol behind the scenes. But as a Laravel developer, you don't need to know about all those things because you all this complexity has been carried out by the MCP package itself. So it's as easy as building the API, but you don't have to worry about like it's as easy as building API as a Laravel
Yeah.
developer. So you don't have to worry about all these things like what is JSON RPC, what is all these different things happening.
So basically, it's gonna compiled into the way like AI agents can communicate, right? That is the difference. Uh, the normal
Exactly,
APIs
it's
cannot be called by the MCPs.
exactly. Normal APIs, if you want to call normal APIs by a MCP server, then you have to build an integration for this. Like you have to build a tool calling integration for specifically for this. And MCP basically just uh, make a protocol on top of that entire tool calling thing, not in the
Yeah.
real world use case. I didn't get that.
But, okay, I think it was good. Maybe if you want, we can wait for a few questions, or we can just conclude this
Yeah, I
meetup.
think I think yeah, we can wind up. I think I
Yeah.
don't see more questions.
Okay. Thanks for joining, guys. You were the good audience who listened it until the end. And congratulations, Kausik, to win the PHP Storm license. Okay, we actually got the question. So I don't know, it's not showing into the my. Okay, now it's showing. So one more question: how to handle file uploading in MCP tool? I don't know if it is possible. I don't know.
File uploading won't be working at of now. MCP server only. I don't think so. MCP server supports the file uploading. If I can be the wrong, I can wrong, but I don't think so. Ki MCP server, like you can share the file to your AI agents, but I don't think AI agents can send the files to you at this point because there is no, like I think there is, it's not possible at this point for sure.
Okay. Thank you for Pushpak for joining live with us and sharing your knowledge about around the MCP. So
And
okay,
I'm
we're
super
gonna
excited
conclude
to
this.
be see you all
Yeah,
guys in Ahmedabad for sure
of course.
when we
And
gonna make
yeah,
that happen.
if you guys are not aware about Laracon India, it's already started, and you can now book the tickets. Maybe few early bird tickets are left if you are lucky enough to get them. So yeah, go to laracon.in, book your tickets, and see you at Laracon India.
By the way, Punyapal, when you guys are gonna invite me and physically, like basically, I can
Yeah,
come to Laravel Ahmedabad event.
December you said, right? You said it already, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
works for
December.
me.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Then
we're gonna do part two on the December,
for
and
sure,
where you're gonna share validations and all stuff you haven't shared today, right?
sure, for sure.
Okay,
Sounds good.
yeah. So bye guys.